So let me show you where we're going to start. And this was not part of the plan, but a very, very interesting case came out yesterday from the 11th Circuit. So that's the appellate court over Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, over the federal courts anyway. And this case involves some discharge bankruptcy and Experian and a dispute that was made. Did Experian handle the investigation correctly? Did they do the credit reporting correctly on this? And I definitely want you guys to check this out. We're not going to go over very much of it today, because actually I did like a 30 or 35-minute video, I think, last night. But let me give you a couple of resources here. So this one will be a link to YouTube. You can watch the video. Okay, I'm also going to send you the actual case so that you can save that. What I would do on all these links I'm sharing, they should pop up in a different tab. Now, if you're on your phone, maybe hard, you can always just email me. I'll send you the stuff. But just sort of open up another tab and then just pause it there and then come back. And I think you'll find this a very, very interesting case, whether or not you have a bankruptcy. Okay, this is a very, very important case for all of us who file these types of lawsuits really around the country. The 11th Circuit traditionally has been pretty consumer friendly. Here lately, there have been some decisions that have been sort of head scratchers, okay? But this is a good decision. I have one area that I disagree with the court on, but overall, I'll take the case because it's a good case. Let me give you the actual, let's see, I thought I had, okay, here it is. So let me share this. This will be the PDF of the actual decision. It's, I think, 19 pages long. And let me go ahead and switch over to this. We'll come back to page 12. But just to show you, this came out yesterday, the 11th Circuit. It's Henry Losh, hope I'm saying that correctly, versus NationStar. But really, NationStar had settled. So it's really against Experian is who the case is against. And what I want to do is just scroll down to page 12. And I think if you're interested in fixing your own credit reports where either the stuff gets fixed or you can sue, and I presume that describes you or you wouldn't be on this webinar. There's a whole lot of other things to do on a Thursday other than spending time with me. Then I think you'll find this to be very interesting. Let me go back to the chat here. So what I want you to focus on is this part right here. They go through this case, they describe all different sorts of theories, and they say, but look, has the consumer shown his file contained factually inaccurate information? Now, this is a discharge of a mortgage. It was reaffirmed, and then that was rescinded. So that's a lot of words to say he did not owe this debt, okay? And so Experian says, the bankruptcy court discharged a mortgage, and so he wasn't personally obligated, but the discharge is merely an injunction against a certain means of enforcing a debt, not an expungement of the debt. Therefore, Experian says it did nothing wrong, reporting the debt still existed. And the 11th Circuit says you're right in your premise, but your conclusion is wrong. It's factually inaccurate because they say, look, you didn't just report the existence of the debt, but also the balance that was owed, the amount that was past due, and how long the consumer was past due. So this will be the final part that we'll take a look at. It says he had a balance of almost 140. He was past due 10,000, 180 days late. And notice what the court says. None of that was true. Okay, he was no longer liable for the balance, nor was he past due on any amount more than 180 days. Okay, so I just share that with you to sort of get your curiosity out, because I want you to read this opinion. You're welcome to watch the video if you like, but definitely read this opinion. But the reason that I bring this up is because it illustrates what we're talking about today, okay, which is looking at the actual accounts and finding the errors in the accounts. So let's review sort of where we have been, and then we'll see where we're going. All right, so you should have the, let me put up session 1 here. So if you did not get a chance to watch session 1, or if you've not received the replay link, and again, any of these you miss, just email me. I will tell you this, past 7 days have been just absolutely crazy with court and some other stuff. So I'm behind on emails, but I will sort of get caught up this weekend. But this is session 1, which is how do we pull our real reports? And then there's some tools that I suggest. And maybe if somebody wants to, you can click on the link here and drop it in the comments for anybody that misses it. And then session 2, let me put that on the screen, is where we're looking at our biographical information. So name, address, phone number, social, date of birth, place of employment. And we're taking each piece of information and saying it's either correct now, or it's wrong, but it used to be correct, or it was never correct. It was always wrong, okay? And then the session that we did last week is our 3rd session. Let me share that now. And thank you, Darren, for putting those links in. And so this is on bankruptcy. Now, if you've never filed bankruptcy, it's still, I think, is helpful to go through it because we're talking about a public record. Right now, tax liens and judgments, as a practical matter, are not showing up on our major credit reports, but that could change tomorrow. Okay. And so the idea is, how do we find the errors in a public record? And then what about these inquiries? Can we dispute a soft inquiry, a hard inquiry? How do we do that? And so that's what we did in those sessions. So let's go now to, what the part that most people I think are interested in. And I mentioned last week, the reason I saved this for the 4th week is if I did this first, I think nobody would really pay attention, or very few people would pay attention to the biographical data and even the inquiries. The significance of sort of doing all this together is as you build your dispute letter, you'll have, here are all the biographical errors, the personal information errors. There might be 5 or 10 errors there. Now, is each one of those significant? Maybe, maybe not. If it's a wrong social security number, that's pretty significant. But even the more minor stuff, if you put all that out there to the bureaus and they don't fix it, and then you say, and here's some errors with the public record of bankruptcy, and they don't fix that. And here's some inquiries that are incorrect, and they don't fix that. And then now we go through every negative account, and we identify maybe it's 2 errors per account. Maybe it's 5 errors per account. And we put all that out there. And then the bureaus, when they get that, maybe you've identified 30 total errors. And they say, well, we fixed 10 of them. Well, guess what? You didn't fix 20 of them. And it's more impressive to bring a lawsuit where we say, not only was there 1 error, 2 errors, 3 errors, 5, 10, 15, there were 20 errors that Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, Innovis, SageStream, whoever it is, they refused to fix. Because see, one time they go, well, that was just a simple little mistake. And twice they go, well, we're having kind of a bad day. 3 times, well, it was an oversight. But 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. So we really want to build out those biographical errors, any errors on bankruptcy, any errors on inquiries. But now we get to the fun part, okay? And this is the part that I enjoy the most. I think we'll be able to get this all done in one session. If we need to, we'll carry on next week with this. But we'll take a look here at this. And so here's what we're looking at. We have basically 2 types of errors, and then I'm giving you a bonus one, which is really part of 1 and 2, but you could think of it as a 3rd category if you want, which is it's just flat out wrong. Okay, and it could be the whole account, or it could be this little piece, or 10 little pieces in the account. It's just wrong information. We'll go through examples. Number 2, it's incomplete information. So I think somebody had asked, let me scroll back through the, D asked if there's incomplete reporting like missing data, is that considered inaccurate? Absolutely, okay. because you have the right to have an accurate credit report and a complete credit report. So if it's just wrong information, that's inaccurate. If it's incomplete, that's also inaccurate. But we usually break those out to say there's accuracy and there's completeness. They have to have both. Okay. Now, sort of the bonus thing is the inconsistencies. Okay. And again, we'll talk about that. I have on here a quote, and I've shared this before, and actually I found the YouTube video. At least I think I did. Well, maybe I meant to put that on there. But anyway, this is from Raising Arizona. If you've seen the movie, or you can just Google, which one is it, young fella, in the Raising Arizona movie. Just Google that on YouTube. And the basic idea is the bank robber comes in with a gun and says, "Everybody freeze, everybody on the ground." And this old guy goes, "Well, which one is it, young fella? Should I freeze? I can't get on the ground. Should I get on the ground? Then I haven't frozen." Okay. And so then the guy says, "Shut up." And the point is, we do that with the credit bureaus. We say, "Well, which one is it?" You say 30 days, but then TransUnion, you say 60, but Experian, you say 90. Well, which one is it? And so we use those inconsistencies to point out whether it's the bureaus or the furnishers, somebody is putting out bad data, and either fix it or delete it. Okay. Because again, the whole goal of this is to correct or get rid of errors. And if they won't do that, then we sue them. And then they correct it, they delete it, and they pay money, which is always nice. So let's see here. Let me get back to our chat here. So let's look now at an example here. So we've got Synchrony Bank, and they say your current balance is $4,000. Now you owe 10. So you owe $10,000. You paid $6,000 in a settlement, not just as a partial payment, but literally they said, pay us $6,000 and we're done. And so the question is, how much do you owe at this point? You owed 10, and they said, pay us 6, and they're reporting 4,000. So put in the chat, is that correct? Or what is the amount that you actually owe? Again, we start off with 10. They said, pay us 6, and they're reporting on Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, we owe $4,000. Okay, so yeah, everybody's writing 0 here. That's absolutely right. That's what we owe, is 0. So that 4,000 is wrong. Okay, so this is just an example of just flat out incorrect information. It's just wrong. Okay, yeah, Darren says Synchrony Bank is the worst. Yeah, so they certainly have a lot of accounts. Okay, now let's look at another example. So your payment, like a lot of payments, is due on the 1st. You don't pay it on the 1st. Okay, you're late paying it. You pay it on the 25th. And when you pull your credit reports, it says 30 days late. So the question is, were you 30 days late when you paid it on the 25th? All right, so Tony says no. Yeah, that's right. We're not late. We're not 30 days late. If we want to be technical, we're 24 days late, which now I understand there's like new theories about math out there in the world, but I still think, 24 does not equal 30. Okay. And this isn't a round up type of deal. 30 days means 30 days late. So if we're 24 days late, we are not 30 days late. That would just be wrong information. Let me see here. Victoria says, can I get a link to watch this when I get off work? Yeah, you should get an automated email that'll have the link. If you don't get that, just let me know, Victoria. And Cornell says, is it okay to write dispute errors in a paragraph form if it's a lot? Yeah, you can structure it however you want. And we'll look at a dispute letter, and I'll give you some pointers there. Yeah, David, 24 ain't 30. That's right. And Kate says, showing 120 days late is status on charge off. And we'll talk about that. If we don't reach that, Kate, just remind me. So let's go now to this one. You never opened an American Express account. You were not an authorized user. In other words, you have nothing to do with American Express, but there's one on your account. Well, is that correct or incorrect? Well, it would be wrong. It's incorrect. Now, there's two possibilities. One is it's a mixed merge file. So I'm John Watts. There's another John Watts. Our files get mixed together. His information is appearing on mine. Mine is appearing on his. That's one possibility. The other is identity theft. Okay? Those are basically the two possibilities. Now, just to give you a little heads up, a lot of times from this side, we don't know. Is it identity theft? Is it mixed merge file? The solution is to kind of treat it as identity theft and also say to the bureaus, I don't know if this is a mixed or merged file or identity theft, but whatever it is, get rid of it. It's not my account. Okay, so again, that would be inaccurate information. And so let's look now at this one. So you're 30 days late, and then right after the 30 days late, you file bankruptcy. Chapter 7, you get a discharge. It wipes out that debt. So this will sound very familiar with the case we just looked at. They have a balance of $1,234. They have 120 days late, past due amount $347. So the question is any of that correct? So what we see here on the screen, the balance that you owe over $1,000, you're 120 days late, you're past due $347. Is any of that true after you receive a discharge? What do you think about that? All right, Cornell says no. Yeah, Darren says no. Jeff, no, it's all false now. Tony, no. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Because after a bankruptcy discharge, and we're not talking about reaffirming a debt or anything like that, we owe zero balance. Now, the 30-day late before we filed bankruptcy, remember our examples, we were 30 days late, then we filed bankruptcy. That would be fine historically to show, but nothing after that. Once we file that bankruptcy, there better not be any lates coming in after that. There can't be a past due. It's impossible to be past due if you don't owe anything, okay? And so all of that would be incorrect. Now, they should let me say that again. They should show in the comments or the remarks section, include in bankruptcy, discharge in bankruptcy, but whether or not they do that, they have to show zero balance, I'm not past due, and there should be no negative information other than the bankruptcy itself after I filed bankruptcy. Let's see, JT says, hello. Hey, good to see you, JT. So let's now look at this one. So you have a charged off account. So, we went months and months not paying, and it started going negative in June 2017. Okay. But in December 2017, all the way through February 2018, there's no data. If you look at the sort of the grid or the chart of the payment history, it's just blank. Okay. So we're looking now at incomplete information. So this would be incomplete, because if you're going to report from this point to this point in a payment history, all of that should be filled out. Okay. But you'll find, frankly, a lot of times with TransUnion, there's just 2 or 3 months that are missing. That would be incomplete. We could dispute that and say, hey, TransUnion or Experian or Equifax or whoever, you're missing all the payment history, December 2017, January 2018, February 2018. I want you to complete that information, or I want you to get rid of the account. Those are the only two options. Either make it complete or get rid of it, okay? Now, you have to use some judgment on this. If this is a good account, maybe there's one 30-day late and it's got a long history, you may not want to, risk deleting this. But I'm talking about, like in this example, a charged off account, a very negative account. At least my clients are happy if we get rid of it or if it gets fixed, okay? And so let's see, let me go back to the chats here. Richard says, what about a charge off after the bankruptcy? Well, again, I would say that is inaccurate, because once a bankruptcy happens, there doesn't need to be anything negative after that. Now, if there's a charge off before the bankruptcy, that would be different. They could historically show that it was charged off, but the current status needs to be discharged in bankruptcy, okay? Let's see, Kate talking about Synchrony Bank. Yeah, they have some issues. And David says Equifax and Experian are bad at charge-off reporting. That's right. So now let's look at another incomplete. So this is a charged off account. You make a $500 payment in December and you pull your report this month. We're here at the end of April 2021, and it says date of last payment is blank. Well, that's incomplete because we did have a payment. We had a $500 payment. Now, if they want to say we're not going to even record or have any field, when I say field, I mean like a data field for data last payment, that's fine. But they do have a field for data last payment. They have a field for amount of payment. Typically in the payment history, you'll have every month and it'll say amount of payment. Well, if that's not showing up in all those fields, then that's incomplete information. Now the bureaus would go, it doesn't matter. What's the big deal? To which my response is, well, it must be a big deal because you have a field there for it, okay? You have a blank there you want people to know what the date of last payment is. You want on the monthly history to show the date and the amount of the payment. So it must be a big deal or you wouldn't have it on there. But once you have it on there, you can't just Equifax, Experian, Training, you just can't pick and choose. Well, we're going to report this, not report this. It's incomplete. So either the furnisher is not reporting it or the credit bureau is not reporting it. Frankly, we don't care which one. We dispute it. We say, look, this is incomplete. I want you to supply this information or get it off my report. Those are the simple options here. Let's see. Let me just grab some of these chats here. So John Andrew Gordon says, do all companies report to all bureaus? No. Generally they do, but they have no obligation. And you mentioned the student loan only showing on one bureau. Yeah, there are some collectors that only report to one. Some furnishers or credit card companies only report to one. Generally, though, you would expect to see it on all three, and sometimes on Innovis, occasionally on SageStream. Let's see, D says, I had one with missing data and disputed it. CRA just removed all the history details as a resolution. Well, see, with that, I would say that doesn't fix it because now you have all this incomplete information, okay? So you might dispute that again and say, guys, that's not the answer to just delete everything. Put all the information in there or get rid of the account. I mean, is the furnisher not giving it to you? Is the furnisher giving it to you and you're refusing to report it? So I would definitely push on that. JT says, yeah, that's good if it's negative. That's right. I wouldn't dispute a positive account unless it's not your account. Okay. So if that other John Watts out there, he has a great American Express account, it's appearing on my report. It might be positive, but it's not my account. Let me get rid of it. Okay. Let's see. D says, yeah, now it's just an account listed as negative. Yeah, I would dispute that again. So JT says, does missing positive okay history affect the credit score? Generally, no, it would not. But even if there's missing positive history, if the account overall is negative, I would dispute that. Now, look, the pushback we get from the bureaus is, well, wait, if we supply this information, that might lower your score. So how can you fuss about us supplying information or not putting information that would actually lower your score? I would say read that 11th Circuit case because it talks about the injury is not the credit score. The injury is the false credit reporting. Now, what it does with the score, that's a different matter. And really, the Fair Credit Reporting Act is not concerned with the score. It's concerned with the accurate data. And the other thing is, not to go down a long tangent, there is no credit score. You have Vantage Score, which is from the bureaus, and you have FICO, which is its own company. But even with FICO, there are dozens of scoring models. Okay, so are we getting a mortgage? Are we getting a car loan, a credit card? Well, which version are we using? Then each credit bureau sort of, in a sense, modifies that version. And so there is no sort of mythical credit score. There are only a whole bunch of credit scores. And so again, we're talking about saying to the credit bureaus, you have false or missing information. Whatever that does with my score, I don't care. I want you to make my credit report accurate and complete. And if you don't, then I'm going to look at suing you. All right, let's see, Cornell. So long as it has a field for information, that information needs to be in the field. Yeah, that's the position I take. And let's see, Kate says one jump up $500 from 1 month to the other. Let's see, Kate, are you talking about maybe like the balance or the payment history? If you don't mind, let me know what you mean by that. Yeah, so John Andrew Gordon, are all furnishers supposed to report to all bureaus? It's totally up to them. They typically do, but there's no obligation. For example, Citibank could say, we're only going to report to Equifax. That would be fine. It's just if they report, and there's no obligation to report, but if a furnisher reports, it must provide accurate and complete information. If a credit bureau is going to receive information from a furnisher, they must make sure it's complete and it's accurate. Let's see, CC says, should I dispute if TransUnion and Equifax are not reporting my length of history from a closed account? Length of history is different. You know, with that, I would view that as being inconsistent, and I would dispute it if it's a negative account. Let's see, Paul says that the payment history shows only the collector, but no prior payment history with the original creditor. So that's going to be, Paul, you'll have the original creditor and then you'll have a debt collector. So the debt collector will not show the prior history, okay, because that's not their history. You'd have to find that on the original creditor. So sometimes you'll find the original creditors on the credit report and the debt collector, and you want to sort of compare those, make sure there's not overlapping. I mean, sometimes we'll see the debt collector, the original creditor will report, let's say through February of 2021, and the debt collector will say, well, we got it back in December 2020. Well, there shouldn't be an overlap there. Okay. Let's see. Kate says, yeah, they're all messed up with the bureaus. Most people, we see their reports. Let's say the average person has 5 negative accounts. Maybe there's one that doesn't have an error, but almost all of them have errors. Let's see, Jeff, is there a way to prevent good, accurate, paid off accounts from dropping off? There's really not. Positive accounts can stay on there unlimited amount of time. But the credit bureau can always say, we're getting rid of it. And a furnisher could say, we're not going to report that anymore. So to my knowledge, there's no way to force them to do that. Let's see, Darren says, I noticed an account that's deleting OK and page while leaving any 30, 60, 90s. Yeah, I think that's a problem. Again, if it's inaccurate or incomplete, you can challenge that. Let's see, Zach says, TransUnion and Equifax Experian have forced arbitration clause when you sign up. So, Zach, here's the issue. If you're using a paid product, it may very well have mandatory arbitration. But normally, if you're just opening like a free account with My Equifax, with Experian, you're getting it through annual credit report, there is no arbitration there. I mean, you have to check and see what the terms and conditions are, but generally, unless you're doing a paid product, I have not seen the credit bureaus in the last decade try to force arbitration. And frankly, sometimes arbitration can be decent. So I tell you what, I'll come back to the chats. Let's go ahead and let's look at some inconsistent information. So in your account, June 2018 says current or okay, but July then says 60 or 90 days late. And you go, wait a minute, how are there enough days from June to July to get to 60 or 90? Well, the answer is there's not. Now, I've seen people go through all this sort of complicated mental gymnastics trying to say, well, here's how it could be. I'm just telling you, maybe there's a 1% chance or 0.1% chance that could be correct. I would dispute it because somebody's got some explaining to do for why you go from okay to 60. Now, maybe the solution is this one really needs to be 30 days late. See, that gets back to that argument. The bureau goes, well, you're wanting us to correct this and it'll hurt your score. You know what? I mean, my score is going to be what my score is, but I want accurate credit reporting. I don't want there to be false credit reporting. I don't want there to be incomplete credit reporting. So when you see an inconsistency like this, it could be one of those is wrong, or they're both wrong, or some other problem here, but something is wrong, okay? Now, you could also find the inconsistencies between Equifax, they might say 30 days late, and TransUnion says 60 days late. Well, remember, that's the Raising Arizona. Well, which one is it, young feller? Is it 30 or is it 60? Now, maybe the truth is they're both 60. Okay, well, at least I have an accurate credit report. But when we point all these things out, we give the bureaus a chance to fix it. And if they don't fix it, they've got a real problem here. So here's another one. Now, Equifax is the only one that will give you the data first delinquency. They're all supposed to, but they don't. But let's just go with this right now. So Equifax says data first delinquency, that's the beginning point when you fell behind and then you never caught that up. Okay, so that's the data first delinquency. September 2018, you go, okay. And then you look at the payment history and says September 2018 current or okay. That's inconsistent. Now, again, the bureaus go, but, yeah, we didn't fix it. But if we had fixed it, we would have shown you as being late in September 2018. Okay, at least it's accurate. Like, I'm trying to figure out, literally, was my data first delinquency September 2018? Was it before then? Was it after then? When was it? And so you can compare a credit report internally. You can compare, maybe you've got 3 or 4 Equifax reports, compare those, and you certainly can compare between the bureaus to find those inconsistencies. Let me go back to the chats here. Chi says, what about a credit collector put the wrong info? Yeah, if it's just the wrong info, dispute that. Kate talks about, the payment due, adding interest. Yeah, sometimes you'll see the past due amount will keep climbing, but, if the minimum payment scheduled is all over the board and just doesn't make sense. I mean, I've seen it where, maybe the balance is $1,000 and the minimum payment's $75, and then 1 month it'll be $750. It's like, well, that's just wrong. I would dispute that. So Richard says, yeah, furnishers have to subscribe to each bureau, and it costs them money to do that. So Sharon says, what if in previous years there's not a field for the balance past due, but the last 2 years there is? So that can be an issue, okay? But here's what I would do. Always try to pull as many reports as you can. So, we talked about in the first session, I mean, Credit Karma is good and all that, but you need your real reports. Identity IQ, Smart Credit, My FICO, those are fine, particularly My FICO for your actual FICO score. But your real reports are going to be Equifax, Experian, TransUnion from annual credit report, or you go directly to the bureaus. Generally, when you go directly to the bureaus, you'll get that extended payment history. And you can even request it be sent to you through the mail, and that will have some different data than through the portal. When I say the portal, I mean myequifax.com, Experian.com, TransUnion.com, and annualcreditreport.com. So if you don't see that history, I would just check in a different version, and you may very well find it there. Let's see, D says, but if the debt collector has history data, it should be complete. Yes, whatever they start reporting, if they're going to put it out there, it needs to be accurate and complete. So Kate says, have original creditor showing as over 120 days, but they sold the account. So the question there, Kate, will be, is this in the current status that it says over 120 days late with nothing else said? That can be a violation. We typically call this a MASIC violation after a case in Texas. And so let me just go down a real quick little tangent here. So the payment status, it's reporting as the current status. And they'll say, well, you were 120 days late, but now it shows a zero balance. A lot of courts say if it was just transferred or sold, that's not going to be a violation. But if you paid it off, or if it was paid off in a foreclosure sale, for example, a mortgage, then to have that current balance of, say, 120 days late, that's inaccurate. Because let me give you an example. So I have let's say I have a mortgage, and I'm 120 days late, and then I sell my house. And it's totally paid off, 100% paid off. And that happens in November 2019. Well, now it says current status 120 days late. That's not right. The current status is paid. Now they could put was 120 days late, previously behind, whatever they want to say, but they better say paid in full. Okay. And if they don't show that, then that can be a good dispute to make. And again, you're pointing out the inconsistencies. If you think about it, the payment status says 120 days late, but the balance says zero. Maybe the remarks say paid in full or paid in full for less than full amount. Now, if it's a transferred or sold, those are harder cases. I'll just tell you, a lot of judges, I think they're wrong, but a lot of judges throw those cases out. We see Sean says, if collection account doesn't have an address to dispute with them, is this a violation? Yeah, you'll see that, Sean, when we get to the spreadsheet, which is ridiculously long, but we do have a column for the address. If that's missing or if it's incorrect, I would dispute that. Say, hey, why don't I have an address? Now, I'll say this, if you're looking at your real reports, get them from annualcreditreport.com. I'm not sure I've ever seen one not have an address. I've seen them have the wrong address, and I think that's a basis to dispute. Let's see, Kate says, have that too, no name for the creditor or the account. Typically, that's going to be if you're using a credit monitoring, smart credit, identity IQ, it may just say like collector, but normally on your real reports, it will have the actual names. Tony says, student loan goes from current in 1 month to 9 days. The next month, I dispute it. They won't fix it or update it. Yeah, I would dispute that and just ask them, say, how is this possible? Now, look, you might be the first person, but the credit bureaus normally won't respond to your questions. But I would still ask the questions like, hey, guys, how can I go from current in January to 90 days late in February? Last time I looked, there's 31 days, and then February there's 28 or 29. How are we getting 90 days here? And when they don't answer you and they won't fix it and you sue them, and let me just give you this sort of heads up. Just imagine this is the dispute letter, okay? And you're sending this for the credit bureau to fix things, for the furnisher to fix things. But if they don't and you sue, then the judge is reading your dispute letter going, let's see, how can I be current in January and 90 days late in February? There aren't enough days. Please explain this. And the judge says, all right, Equifax, what was your response to that? Oh, well, Your Honor, we did this thing called ACDV and EOSCAR. And by the way, let me share something with you here. This is a video that I did a little bit ago that, again, I would just click on and put another tab, just sort of save it. This just explains how do we go from the credit bureau to the furnisher with this thing called an ACDV, and this pipeline is called EOSCAR. If you're interested, it's a little technical, but if you're interested, you can watch that. But the bureau will say, well, Judge, we did an EOSCAR, ACDV, and this is what came back. It's like, no, I want to know, where did you answer his question? The question is, how do you go from current to 90 days late? I don't see that. Where's your letter responding to that? Well, Judge, we don't ever answer any questions. You see how annoying that would be? Because the judge is up there, can't say this, but he or she is up there going, you mean if you mess up my credit report and I ask you a question, you're not going to answer it? And all the jurors are sitting there looking at this going, oh, that could be me. They don't even answer your questions. Pretty common sense question. How do I go from 0 to 90 days late in a month? How is that even possible? And so we're doing these letters to get things fixed, but also to lay the foundation for having an effective lawsuit. So I hope that makes sense. Richard said, what's the best way to locate all errors? Which report is the only way to determine the account's closed on CRA? Well, the best way is just to gather up all your reports, and then I'll show you a spreadsheet to just literally copy and paste the information, and then you can see it all. Kate asked about any software. So the short answer is I would use a spreadsheet, okay? Now, I may talk about some software in this session or in the next session that I'm working on that, totally free. I'm not, trying to sell stuff to people. We'll see if how that plays out. But right now, just sort of learn how to do it manually. In the spreadsheet, you really have to do manually. I mean, there are, data scraping things, but they just don't work accurately on the credit report. So you really just need to do that manually. Okay, so let's keep going. Then I'll come back to the comments here. So I want to give you a couple ways to think about these errors. Okay, so here's some broad categories. It's just not my account. Okay, now all this stuff I'm talking about, I'm saying do this legitimately. Okay, I'm not talking about the person that this is a fairly common experience for me. I'll talk with somebody and they'll say, yeah, I got this bogus account on my credit report. I'm like, well, what is it? They go, it's Capital One. I go, okay. So you didn't have a Capital One account. John, they were unable to verify that. I go, okay, well, we'll talk about the credit bureaus in a minute. This is me and you talking. Did you have a Capital One account? John, I've not seen a wet ink signature on any receivable issued by the national bank known as Capital One. I go, okay, I don't even know what you just said. Here's my very simple question. Did you ever have a Capital One credit card in your wallet? John, I think we're going down the wrong path here. We need to talk about verification and violations of admiralty law. And I'm like, you know what? We're not having this conversation. Okay. What I'm not talking about doing something stupid where we're trying to get hyper technical and say, well, what do you mean did I have a Capital One card? I mean, did you have a Capital One card? Okay. The people that do all this sort of garbage, and look, there are lawyers that do this, say, well, unless there's a wet ink signature, you are not liable on that credit card debt. And I'm like, dude, what are you smoking? I mean, you obviously do not appear in front of judges on this sort of stuff. The judge is going to say, excuse me, answer the question, did you have a Capital One credit card? It's either yes or no. You're under oath. Well, the wet ink signature. No. Now, look, there are issues that come up about the details of the contract. What's the interest rate? What's the late payment? What's the, over the limit charge? So they may have big problems proving it, but we can't get cute here. Either we had the account or we did not have the account. Now, different story with Midland Funding, Portfolio, these debt buyers, okay? Because you never had an account with them. They claim to have bought the debt. Whole nother story. But I'm just saying, do this legitimately, okay? So if you have Regions Bank as your mortgage company, don't say, well, I think because we went off the gold standard, all mortgages are no. Do you have a Regions Bank mortgage? Okay. And so if we don't, then we can honestly, legitimately fill out an identity theft affidavit, a police report, and say, look, I don't know if this is identity theft or this is a mixed merge file. Remember, two people, similar name, they get merged together. But this is just flat out not my account. Get rid of it, okay? And they either get rid of it or they get hammered in a lawsuit. But don't do this, sometimes called a credit sweep, where it's like, oh, every negative account, I'm just going to lie and say it's identity theft. That's a crime, Now, are the odds that they're going to throw you in prison for that? They'll throw some people in prison, okay? And they certainly go after credit repair companies that do this sort of garbage, okay? So if you lie about, oh, I never had a Capital One account, your credibility's shot, absolutely shot, okay? And now you have no credibility. And I'll just tell you, in my firm, if somebody lies on a credit dispute, like we won't take their case. Even if they have a good case, we're like, nope, because you just destroyed your case by lying, okay? So be honest, be legitimate about it, and be very straightforward about it. So it can be, look, it's not my account. Whoops. Here we go. All right. It can be not my account, or it can be bankruptcy errors. And we talked about that at the beginning with that 11th Circuit case. And we also had an example of that. And then what are called status or pay history errors, so wrong balance, inconsistent payment history, missing payment, wrong status. That's that MASIC case that I was describing, the 120 days late, when you paid it off. Okay, that's incorrect unless it shows that. Let me close this little YouTube video here. Okay, so let me go back to the questions here. Andrew says, how do you get a paid charge off your credit report? So you get a settlement from the original creditor, you paid the settlement. How do you get that off your credit report? Well, the answer is really the same answer on all negative accounts. You have to find an error. Okay, there is no sort of just magic. I'm not saying you were suggesting this, but there is no magic letter. Okay, somebody starts talking to you about a 609 letter, just tune them out because they don't know anything about what they're talking about. They're just selling you snake oil. You have to find an inaccuracy, an incomplete item in this account or trade line, as it's called, to dispute. And then if it gets fixed, we can't complain if we have an accurate credit report, even if it's negative. If I legitimately was 60 days late and they fix it and they show it correctly as being 60 days late, I got to live with that. Okay. But if they don't, now I have the hammer to sue them, sue the credit bureau, sue the furnisher, sue all of them. So that's the way that we get rid of any incorrect information, whether it's my name, social, place of employment, details about a bankruptcy, public filing, inquiries that are not correct, accounts that are not correct. We dispute it, we point out the error, and they either fix it or we sue them, and then they fix it and they pay money. All right, so David says, Credit Karma can be helpful trying to find the original credit reporting if it's no longer on your report. Yeah, I will say this about Credit Karma. I do recommend signing up for it because it'll have this history, and you can go back and see, oh, let me see what my credit report was 6 months ago. And then you go, oh, that's where that Synchrony bank account is. Now let me compare that with, say a portfolio recovery that bought it. And so here's an example, and David, I really appreciate you pointing that out. Let's say Synchrony says that the date of first delinquency is, June 2017, okay? And so it's going to stay on your report basically till June of 2024, 7 years later. But your portfolio account, which you've matched it up to that Synchrony, it says it'll stay on your report till 26. Like, wait a minute now, there's a problem here. And so we can put those together. So that's where Credit Karma can be helpful. Also during this, as I'm recording this, April, was it 29 of 2022, we can go to annualcreditreport.com once a week through April of 2022. And so, we've still got a year. And so that's 52 credit reports you can get and save them. Save them as a PDF. Use Credit Karma. That's fine. Just don't rely on Credit Karma unless you have no choice. So appreciate that, David. See, Andrew Gordon says, when it comes to late payments, do all furnishers have to start with 30 days and then 60 days? I've seen on my sister's credit report a mortgage loan, student loan starting with 90 days. Is this an exception? So I'll say this, there can be some odd things about student loans, but I would just take sort of a very straightforward approach. Hey, how'd I go at 90 days late? Now I will say this, if the loan is transferred, the new company that starts reporting might start it at 90 days late because it literally is 90 days late. Okay, so they don't have to start over at current. But just when you see like, okay, 90 days late, it's like, wait a minute, that's not correct. Okay. Let's see. Chi says, if one agency removed it, are the rest obligated to follow suit? No. So just because Equifax says, you know what, we're getting rid of this Capital One account, that does not require the others. It's sort of the opposite in a way. If a furnisher realizes, hey, I've been reporting false information, they're supposed to then update all three bureaus. They don't always do that though. Let's see, Darren says, Kate, Google Sheets or Excel are probably the easiest ways to track your reports, compare them. Just make sure you're entering the information correctly. That's absolutely right, Darren. Absolutely right. And that's why I prefer, it's easier if you have two screens, two monitors, to say, let me go grab the data here and paste it. Because when we start typing, we might type it in wrong. But generally, if you're copying and pasting, as long as you're doing it correctly, that will be good. See, Joe says, in regard to data last payment, data first delinquency, I don't think TransUnion or Experian show it. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. They show an estimated date of removal. Isn't that inaccurate? So I'm going to give you two answers, Joe, because any lawyer should be able to at least give you two answers, right? So the first answer, this is my view, is it's absolutely incorrect for them not to show that. That is just an essential piece of information, because that's what starts that clock, what's called obsolescence, that 7-year clock. We have to know those dates. Well, we don't get that on TransUnion and Experian. They give us the estimated date of removal, to which, my response is, what do you mean estimated? You should know. Okay, don't give me estimated. You should know, because the furnisher is required to give each bureau the date of first delinquency. Debt collectors are required to give the bureau the date of first delinquency. And there's all sorts of rules that they can't find it, but they better give that to the bureaus. So one thing you can do, and I'm trying to think, I may have taken it out of the sample letter I'm giving you guys just because it was getting so long and I didn't want it to be overly complicated. But if you want to go this route, you can say, look, Equifax says date of first delinquency is June 2017. So Experian, you don't give that to me, which I want you to give it to me. But Experian, you say this will come off in February 2024. Well, that doesn't match. And TransUnion, you say it'll come off in March 2024. Like, I got 3 different dates here. What's going on? Help me understand this. So again, the power of questions, okay, to ask these bureaus, like, explain this to me, guys. And this is one reason why I like one letter going to all 3 bureaus, because you can say, hey, Equifax, you say this, but Experian, you say that. And TransUnion, you say something different. Guys, get it together. Which one is it, right? Raising Arizona, which one? And so now the second part of that answer is there have been some lawsuits against, for example, TransUnion, saying you don't supply the date of first delinquency. And there have been some courts, I think wrongly, but courts that have said, well, because they don't give that to the user, someone who buys my credit report, then that's not considered to be a part of your file. So you have the right to everything in your file with a few exceptions. So the way the courts have gotten around this is say, well, we know that the definition of a file is all the information they have on you, but we're going to change that definition and say it's all the information a bureau has on you that they report to somebody else. I think that's wrong. I think the way I described it is a way to kind of get at that. Now, I would not bring a suit just on that, but remember we talked about they've got 5 errors on your biographical, and they've got 2 errors on the bankruptcy, and they've got 3 errors on this account and 2 errors on that account. We're sort of putting all that in there. Well, we can include then, hey, TransUnion, you didn't give me the date of first delinquency. I specifically asked you about it. TransUnion, you didn't do this. So hope that that's helpful to you. Let's see, D says, does a collection agency have to own the debt to report? No. As long as they have the right to collect, even if the original creditor still owns it, they can still report it. So Carlene says, collection account is reporting current paid on time. I disputed for deletion or proof of payments that are being made. The balance is not changing. The bureau said, hey, it's reporting accurately. So the thing I would ask about that, Carlene, is, are you making payments? If you're not making payments and they're reporting payments, then that's just wrong, okay? So again, any of these accounts, we're looking for it's just wrong or it's incomplete. See, Darren says, basically asking you to do the math, calculate it backwards. Yeah, that's right. On the sort of estimated date, the thing is the dates don't match up. Now, TransUnion may come in and go, hey guys, we actually peg it at 6 years and 11 months. Well, tell me that, okay? I need to know this. Don't just have some secret internal policy. Okay, I'm just going by what it says. The date it will be removed, and that's different than the date for, TransUnion and Experian and Equifax. Like, somebody explain this to me, okay? And Kate says, yes, current status. I think that was about the sort of that MASIC theory, the 120 days late. Lacking fields from the annual credit report. Okay. Yeah, I would then see if you can get go to myequifax.com, go to Experian.com. You really can't get a free TransUnion other than Credit Karma, but you can pay for a TransUnion report, and you might find a little bit more information. You would think all this would be the same, right? MyEquifax paper copy, Equifax from annual credit report, and myequifax.com ought to be the same, but they're usually not. Let's see. Okay. Darren asked, what's the name of that case? So it's, I think this is the spelling of it. Macik, M-A-C-I-K. Let me go back here. Okay, so Richard says, consumer signed a contract to be charged interest on a rental agreement. Can collection agency keep adding interest according to the contract? It's a great question, Richard, excuse me. A lot of that's going to depend on what does the contract say and what does your state law say. Can they continue to do that? And that gets pretty detailed into state law. So let's see, Jason says, have an account that was due on the 17th, but it has us 30 days late the same month. I've disputed, come back accurate. So here's the thing, Jason, make sure, let's say we start off January 2021 and it's due on January 17th. And I pay it on January the 29th. And then in February, they go back and report me in January as being 30 days late. That's wrong. Okay. You just have to sort of map this out and make sure that, what it's reporting is actually for that month and not the following month. I realize that may not make a whole lot of sense. Hopefully it does. But just, I would sort of line up on a piece of paper, here are all my payments. Here's the due date. Here's when they show me as being late. And you can usually then see the errors with that. Let's see, Darren. Yeah, most states depend on laws of the state. Absolutely right. So let's see. John says, American Express reports a charge off and behind in payments, never agreed to a payment agreement with them. How do I handle this? Well, I guess I would ask John, did you have an American Express account? And then there's going to be some terms and conditions of that. And you can often find those on the CFPB website. And, now if this is a sort of the old fashioned kind of American Express where there is no payment plan, you're supposed to just pay it off at the end of the month, then, I would just look at the way it's reporting. Is it just saying past due, or is it saying, that there was a minimum payment owed? I would just compare in detail with what it says with what your agreement says. Let's see. Tony says, when CRA reports trade lines charge off but 100% payment history, should I ask CRA to delete the whole trade line or ask to modify it and remove the charge off? So, Tony, I'm not exactly sure on that. If you mean all the payment history just says charge off, month after month, that's actually correct the way it's supposed to be. But maybe give me a little bit more detail on that. And let's see, a question, what do if someone has no credit history? Really, you need to start taking out some credit. Could be a secured credit card. Could be you go to a bank and they say, hey, deposit $500. We'll give you a $500 secured credit card or a $500 installment loan. Just whoever you use, you want to make sure they're going to be reporting it to the bureaus because you want to get some benefit. And so you have to kind of start small like that. You get a gas card, like a Shell, Exxon, Mobil, whatever it is. And that can be a way to start increasing. Let's see. Joe says, I understand what you're saying. Darren's wondering, since it's only the month, year, not the date, month, year. So on that, they really should report it literally like January, like the open date, January 5th, 2021. Some bureaus, though, do sort of narrow it down to just the month. I wouldn't necessarily dispute that, okay? But if you do see some discrepancies, like I've seen open date be January 30th, and then another bureau says February. Those aren't the same. I would dispute that. David says, trying to figure out how there can be terms on collection account. It would just be whatever the underlying contract is. In other words, that gets transferred to the collector. Let's see. Yeah, so Paul asked same thing. Okay, I tell you what, I'll come back to the comments here. Let me, let's talk about this. We've touched on this briefly. You know, how do you track these? How do you find these inconsistencies? You know, one way is, and trust me, I've done both of these, okay? It's just sort of the eyeball method. You sort of look at my Equifax report, you say, wait a minute, it says my date of last payment was May 2017. Now let me flip to my Experian, and that says June. Okay, that's an error. Let me write that down on the dispute letter. And that certainly works. It just, you're more prone to have errors with that because there's so much data, particularly if you have multiple credit reports. And so the other way to do it is with the spreadsheet. And so let me talk to you about some tools that we've got. So there's a spreadsheet. It'll have 3 sort of tabs: bankruptcy, which is what we had last week, bankruptcy and inquiries, and then the account, and then an updated dispute letter, and then just sort of a cheat sheet that just gives you a little summary of where we are. So let me start sharing those items here. All right, so here's the little cheat sheet, which you should be able to download. And then this will be the letter. And then this will be the spreadsheet. So hopefully everybody is seeing all 3 of these. It looks like, at least on my end, they're still available when I share more than one at a time. So it should be a little cheat sheet in Word, a dispute letter, and a spreadsheet. And while you are clicking on that, let me show you the little cheat sheet here. I'll put out on the screen. And again, if folks are just on your, your mobile, or you're, in a car or whatever, just email me and I'll send you these documents. So just the starting point, number one, we pull our credit reports, right? And I mean, I'll have people come to me and they say, I found all these errors. I say, let me see your credit reports. And it's a credit monitoring. And I'm like, well, yeah, when it says, this for this certain field, that's not that field. It's just an error in the credit monitoring. And so we really have to have our real reports. That's really session 1. And then we start with that biographical information. And I don't have that on a spreadsheet. I mean, you could put it on there. I just had a simple Word document. If anybody needs that, let me know. But we literally just take each piece of information and we picture 3 buckets in front of us, okay? So bucket 1 is, it's correct now. This is my name. This is where I live. This is where I work. This is my phone number. Bucket number 2 is, it used to be correct, but it's wrong now. My name has changed. My employment has changed. I don't live in, San Antonio, Texas. I moved 12 years ago, okay? So it used to be correct, but now it's wrong. And then the 3rd bucket is, it was never correct. I never lived in Portland. I never worked for IBM. This was never the spelling of my name. I never had this phone number, okay? And don't skip that step, because you want that cleaned up. And you're putting that to the bureaus, and you're giving them an opportunity to do the right thing or do the wrong thing. If they do the wrong thing, that makes your lawsuit, if you can ultimately file one, better, because it's not just, 1 error or 2 errors, it's 6 errors or a dozen errors. I mean, I've seen people that, I think it was yesterday, I was looking at a credit report and there were 14 phone numbers and only 1 is still correct. I think 3 were prior phone numbers and the rest were just not our phone number. They're like, that's my sister's ex-boyfriend. Like, why is that on my credit report? Okay, let's get rid of all that stuff. Let's clean that up so that we're not having to explain when a creditor pulls our credit report because we're trying to get a mortgage and they're like, well, this says that you live in Michigan. You're like, no, that's wrong. Well, your credit report says you live in Michigan. Did you buy a house? Are you renting? You don't have to deal with that. Get rid of all that negative stuff that is inaccurate, okay? And then step number 3 is we look at bankruptcy. Do they have the wrong chapter, the wrong case number, the wrong court, the wrong date filed, the wrong date discharge, the wrong date of dismissal? Okay. And we challenge that. It either comes off or it gets fixed or that goes into a lawsuit. Look at the inquiries. We got the hard inquiries that affect your score. Were you doing business? Were you trying to do business with the company? How about the soft inquiries? Now, some of those are just promotional. Okay. And unless you opt out, you really can't stop that. But remember, if I discharge, what was my example? I think Citibank credit card, I discharge that in bankruptcy. Well, if after the discharge, Citibank is doing an account review on me, why are you doing an account review? That debt's gone. You have no basis to pull my credit report. And remember, we talked about this last week. These companies say, well, it's just a soft pull. It doesn't affect your score. And I said, it doesn't matter. Well, that 11th Circuit came out yesterday. That opinion talks about that as well, that, hey, these can be soft pulls. These can be hard pulls. A credit pull is a credit pull is a credit pull, okay? Either it's legal or it's illegal, and we will sue over an illegal soft credit pull. Did you close out the account with Target or Synchrony Bank? Well, then why are they pulling my credit report? Maybe you got sued by Midland and you won your case, and the next month, boom, they pull your credit report. Now, maybe they're doing it for another account, but if they're doing it for the account that you beat them on in the collection case, that's wrong. And let me just share again. This is just a little Word document for if you see an inquiry and you legitimately think it's wrong, you can ask them, hey, give me the basis for pulling my credit. And then what we've been doing in this session is really the step 5, put the data on a spreadsheet. If it's not yours, that's a mixed file. It's an identity theft. Was it discharge in bankruptcy? Does it have wrong information, incomplete, inconsistent? And I'll show you this. We want to clearly identify the account, clearly identify the error. Tell the Bureau what we want you to do, fix it or delete it. And we just want this to be persuasive if a judge or jury was reading, where they go, yep, that was pretty simple on Citibank. All right, Equifax, what'd you do? Well, we skipped that. It's pretty simple. Why'd you skip it? And so that's just a little overview of the process. Let me go back to the chats here. Let's see. Cece says, I have a 30-day late payment from a year ago, but I see the company just updated this month. Is this correct? So they're supposed to update every month until the account is closed. Now, they could update it this month and say, oh, we just realized a year ago you were late 30 days April of last year, you were 30 days. And so they put that. The question is going to be, is it accurate or inaccurate? That's really the question. See, Joe says, I have a couple questions off topic. Wondering best way to ask you. Might make good YouTube video. Hey, I am always looking for YouTube topics. So really just email those to me. You can just reply to any of these automated emails. And I'm happy to look at those and put those as YouTube videos. Anthony says, what the credit bureaus don't delete an old address. So here's the deal on the biographical information. If it's like your social security number, your date of birth, your name, I mean, those are absolutely you, okay? If they don't fix those, then I would certainly look at suing. If they don't delete an old address, I would not sue only on that. But if you have other things, I certainly would throw that in there. If they won't delete a landline that you haven't had for 10 years, would I sue just for that? Probably not. I mean, every case is different. There might be a reason to. But I certainly would add that if they also don't delete or complete information. Okay, so I say, hey, this is incomplete, either complete it or delete it. And they don't do that on my Capital One account or my mortgage or my student loan. Well, then I would throw in the phone number also. So hope that makes sense and helps you. Let's see. Tony says, collection agency has not responded to 2 of my debt validation letters. I called collection to discuss the no response. They informed me could not discuss this because they consider my letter to be cease and desist. So, Tony, the question would be, and I see people do this. Some do it intentionally, some do it mistakenly. They do a dispute letter. It says, hey, I need you to validate this. And by the way, cease communications, or I refuse to pay. Well, see, that's kind of contradictory. This says, send me information. This says, don't send me any information. And so the credit bureau or the debt collector, the safe thing to do would be to not respond. Okay. So we can't put them in sort of a no-win position. We either say, give me validation and I dispute, or I dispute and I refuse to pay, which is cease and desist. But we don't do both of those. So we do have the next training course will be on dealing with debt collectors. Okay. And we'll go over that, and I'll give you sort of some form dispute letters, but also something that will generate dispute letters for you. Just ask you questions and then it'll populate it for you. So it's some document automation. Let's see, Kate, they can't even get the account right. Yeah. Zach, I feel my balance is wrong for my charged off credit card. No evidence. Can I still dispute? Well, the thing is, so let me say this, then this gets a little technical. The FCRA says if information is incomplete or inaccurate, it should be fixed or deleted, or if it cannot be verified. So if you just take that, you should be able to dispute and say, hey, I want you to go verify this information. And if the bureau can't do it, they should delete it. That's not the way the courts view this, though. They want for you to show there's an inaccuracy. So that's why I would look on that particular account, compare the bureaus, okay? Compare different credit reports, and you might find errors there. Let's see. All right, I think I'm caught up here on these, maybe a few more. Oh, I see some new ones have popped up. Paul says, medical debt claim. Hospital sets up separately numbered account for each charge. They're all paid in a lump sum by credit card charge after insurance. Is it an inaccuracy for subsequent debt collector to claim separate account defaults? So assuming we did not pay these, this case actually went in front of the Seventh Circuit, which Seventh Circuit is basically Illinois, Indiana, I think Wisconsin. And the court there said it's not. So in other words, I go and there's, a dozen $100 charges. And so the collector puts a dozen accounts on. At least the Seventh Circuit said that's okay for them. Let's see. John Gordon says, what is your recommendation for sending dispute certified mail receipt, but the post office loses the letter? No way to know if the Bureau of Furnisher received the dispute. So I would definitely send by certified mail. And if it does not get delivered, and sometimes that happens, then, that's not on the Bureau or the Furnisher. So I would resend it. But I'll say this, we send out a ton of certified mail. Maybe, 1 out of 20 doesn't get delivered. Maybe it's even a lower percentage than that. So it's pretty good. Now, again, every now and then something gets like caught in this loop or this black hole and it just never leaves. But I would do it certified. And if you think it hasn't been delivered, I would just send it again. Let's see. Elisa Williams, case number same, docket number. Yeah. So that's what we talked about, Elisa, last week. And on the spreadsheet, and I'll pull up spreadsheet in a moment, you'll see it's got, like the case number. And generally that's the same as the docket number. You got to look in your particular court, how do they describe it? And look, if your court says, this is the case number 1234, and the credit report says this is the docket number 1234. I wouldn't dispute that. They're just, sort of same substance, just calling it something different. But if one says 1234 and the other says, 456, I would dispute that. See, Zach, can I dispute charge off balance without evidence? I think they rounded up. If you're talking about like it was $1,008.97 and it's reporting as $1,009, I personally would not dispute that. Okay. Let's see, CC, do late payments from a year ago affect your FICO score? I'm hearing not to worry about late payments that are over 180 days late. My late was 32 days late. This is where it's difficult because there is no one FICO score. There's a FICO score for your credit card, FICO score for an auto loan, FICO score for a home loan. And this I think will make sense. Being late on a home loan, which would that be more damaging to when you're applying for a new home loan or for a car loan or for a credit card? Well, it's damaging for all of them, but it's really important for the home loan, okay? Now, if I miss a credit card payment and I'm trying to get a mortgage, they're going to be concerned about that, but not as concerned as a credit card company will be, because that's kind of, I missed a credit card. Now I'm applying for a credit card. So again, there are different scoring models, and there's FICO score 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10, and different bureaus use different ones. You could go to a mortgage broker right here and they use FICO score 8, and you go next door and they use FICO score 9, and they treat things differently. So the more time that goes by, the less important it is. The more recent it is, the more damaging it's going to be. Okay. Let's see. What do you do with someone with no credit history? Yeah, I thought I'd answer that. If I didn't, I apologize. If you have no credit history, then you've got to build credit history. So you go get a gas station card, you get a secured credit card, you put a CD, $500 in a bank, and they give you a little installment loan. You just want to make sure that's going to be reporting to the credit bureaus, and that'll start building some credit history. And then you can get something else, and that again will build credit history. Let's see. Kate says, I check online with USPS by tracking number. They will text or email delivery status. Yeah. And let's see. Darren talks about, okay. Yeah. Go to CFPB. Look, there are some things that credit repair places often will use, like, I forget what it is, myjeweler.com or something. It's, I think, way overpriced stuff. Now, they may give you like a $10,000 credit limit, and that might be useful because it gives you sort of more total available credit. But I would first start off with, like Darren says, CFPB website. They'll have some information. If you, are long-term customer of Wells Fargo, or your family is, maybe go in and talk to a banker there and say, hey, trying to build credit. What products do you have? A lot of these banks are trying to compete in that space. And so, it's kind of surprising, the banks that will do like a secure credit card, or you give us $500 and we'll loan you $500. So it's totally secured for them. So let me just go over a couple of these things. So this will be the letter, and it's what you saw before. We've got the biographical information. Here's sort of just an easy way to, you can say Equifax, and obviously you delete whatever you don't need, but you say this, but the correct information is that on my bankruptcy. And then let's see, inquiries, again, you would just sort of copy and paste this for all the inquiries and say, hey, I see that Capital One pulled my credit report on this date. They pulled it through Innovis, and here's why I think it's wrong. And I've just listed a bunch of reasons there. Now on the accounts, so here's the pattern. We identify the account, we say, here's the problem. And this is my suggestion for you. Be specific. The example I give here is the June 2018 payment is wrong or incomplete because, rather than just saying payment history is wrong. See, a lot of people do that, or a lot of people sort of back up and they just go, the Capital One account's wrong. That does nothing. Like, you can't sue over that. It might work from a credit repair standpoint, if you do that 3 or 4 times, but we can't sue over that because the judge is going to be looking at that saying, what in the world was Equifax supposed to do with this? Or what was Capital One supposed to do with this when you just say it's wrong, it's incomplete? You got to spell it out, be specific, okay? And, This bullet point right here, again, visualize a judge or jury reading this going, that's pretty simple. Why couldn't you figure it out? So I like to make it as organized as possible. Like, here's the account, in separate paragraph for each error. Don't worry about how long it is. I think as Cornell maybe asked, if it's starting to get really long, can you sort of bunch it all into one paragraph? You can, but just remember, you run the risk of, they fix everything but like the fifth error that you point out on Capital One, and then you sue them, and the judge is like, she's sitting there reading it going, wow, my eyes are crossing. Like, you got so much stuff in this one paragraph. I see why they just missed it. I don't think that's illegal. They just made a mistake. So I like to anticipate what are all their excuses and then rip those excuses away from them. Okay. So that's just my approach. And so again, I just have some stuff on here, the account type. So is it a credit card? Is it an installment loan, student loan? The status, the open date, close date. And again, I'm just giving you these as examples here. The real sort of magic will come in the spreadsheet. So remember, down here at the bottom, you've got bankruptcy. You flip over to the inquiry and then the account tool. Now look, I think I said this, I'm not like a fancy spreadsheet guy, and you guys are sort of the guinea pig. I mean, we have this for our internal use, but trying to make it more understandable. We've got, so we start off with, well, is this Equifax? Who is this? The date. Now, I also suggest using the spreadsheet when you get the results of investigation. So you can start building this record. So you might have, here's my January Equifax, January Experian, January TransUnion. Here's my February, of the same. Oh, in March, I got results of investigation. Just like list all those in the spreadsheet. And then you get to, okay, what's the account? And then this one in yellow is just, is this your account or is this identity theft or mixed merge? What's the account number, the loan type, the account type, the responsibility? I mean, think about it. If you have a Capital One and it says it's individual on Equifax, but on TransUnion it says joint. Well, which one is it, young fella? Is it individual or is it joint? That's an inconsistency. I would dispute that. The date open, the pay status, date updated, balance updated. So we're just trying to put all this information in here. This one, the contact, I've mentioned this briefly. What if they don't list the name? They don't list the contact info. I would dispute that. Hey, Equifax, you don't even list the name of this company. Who in the world is this collector? Or, this address, I sent a letter to them and it came back as undeliverable. If they can't even get their address right, why would you trust them with my information? Get rid of this, okay? So again, we put all that in there. We've got, what you'll notice is, and I've just changed them red and blue for each month. So this is June. We've got the balance, scheduled payment, actual payment, available credit, credit limit, past due, pay history. And then we have it for May of 21 and April. And it goes on, I don't know, like, a football field or something. Okay. I didn't go through all these and change colors. So you can make this, if you're like a spreadsheet whiz, fix it for you and then send me a clean one because, again, I would love for you guys to help me with this as well. And what this allows you to do is to say, let's just make something up here. Let's say the balance is $1,000 for this credit report. Well, here it says it's 900. Here it says it's 1,000. Okay. Well, I would do something, fill it out in, I don't know, blue or something, just to highlight for me to say, hey, I can dispute this because this is inconsistent. It can't all be that. Okay. So again, scheduled payment, maybe it's 100 and 195. Well, those are not the same. Okay. The pay history, it might say, okay. And then it might say 60 and it might say 30. Well, again, I'm disputing that. It's easier. It takes longer to get it on the spreadsheet. But once it's on the spreadsheet, man, you can go through your dispute letter. You really don't even need a template. You're just going through going, Okay, yeah, payment history for November 2019. Hey, Equifax, you say it's okay. Experian, you say 60. TransUnion, 30. Okay, for the balance for October 2019, Equifax, you say 1,000. I mean, you're just literally like typing. I just have given you kind of some template to make it a little bit faster. So hopefully all that makes sense and that's helpful to you. Again, make it your own, make it useful for you. These are just tools. There's nothing magical about them. And I want you just to be able to get all the data from those credit reports somewhere, okay, hopefully in a spreadsheet. And then you look at that spreadsheet and then your letter will just flow. And some people say, well, I'd rather just work on the dispute letter as I go. Okay, but trust me, this is more accurate and it will be quicker in the long run. And when you get those results of investigation, you just pop them on the spreadsheet and you can easily see, okay, yeah, they did fix this, or no, they still haven't fixed this, okay? And so hopefully that's helpful to you. Let me go back to the presentation here. And yeah, okay, so we're at the end. Let me just pop the spreadsheet back up and I'll go through the questions and see if I've missed anything here. So Jeff asked a great question. Does a human being actually read our disputes? So the answer is not usually, okay? Not usually. The dispute comes in and it's scanned in, and then usually that's transferred to Colombia, to Pakistan, to India, to some foreign country. And it's not even usually an employee of Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. It's a contractor. And then they get the scan, and then they will take your dispute letter. And a lot of times they're getting paid. The outsourced company is being paid like 25 to 50 cents for your whole dispute letter. You can imagine, it drives them crazy. You give them like this 18-page letter with 74 disputes in it. And they'll take that and say, okay, well, you're disputing this account and we're going to reduce that to a 2-digit code, not mine. Well, maybe you said the balance is wrong, the payment history is inconsistent on this month, the status is wrong between these bureaus, all this stuff. And they go, yeah, we're going to put that as not mine or never late, okay? And now they can type stuff, and sometimes you'll see, well, we'll see in lawsuits, the ACDV, okay? And that, again, is from the bureau to the furnisher. It travels through EOSCAR, just all these names and acronyms. But the ACDV will say consumer disputes, claims never late. Well, your dispute letter may have 5 things, but they just put 1. Well, that's a problem for the credit bureau, okay? Now, it may, to some extent, get the furnisher off the hook, but nowadays, normally, the bureau is actually sending your scanned letter directly to the furnisher so they can read it for themselves. So sometimes a human being does, but they want to make it automated where no human's looking at it. So then the follow-up is it better to handwrite them? I mean, you can. I'll just say this. It's harder, because either you got to like handwrite 3 separate letters or handwrite one and make photocopies of it. From my vantage point, I really don't care if a human being looks at it. All I care about is, did they look at every one of my errors I identified? Did they fix it or delete it? And if they did, God bless them. That's wonderful. Whether it was a computer or somebody that can't even speak English. But if they don't fix it, I really don't care. Did a computer mess it up? Because guess what? Human beings program computers. Did a human being mess it up? You know what? The bottom line is they didn't get it fixed. They didn't get it deleted. So I'm suing them. Okay. So I would not handwrite unless you just don't have, a good way to type something or print it out. Some people think if it's handwritten in a certain ink, that, I don't know, either gets the bureaus to look at it more closely or not look at it. I would just, if it was me, I'd just type it. And, there are lawyers that advise, like put spelling errors in so they'll ignore it. Like, don't do that. That's amateur hour stuff. Like, just make it clear, make it presentable. And whether that's handwriting. Now, if you saw my handwriting, oh my God, I can't read my handwriting. Okay. Now, I've seen people with beautiful handwriting. Hey, that's great. You can do it. Just make it clear, make it easy to understand. Because again, at some point, a judge and jury, they're going to be looking at that. And you want them just shaking their head going, what in the world are these bureaus doing? So I hope that answers your question. Tony says, is it true all payment history must be complete and correct? I have accounts with gaps of ND for no data in payment history. Yeah, I would dispute those. It's incomplete. Why don't you have any data for that point? Okay. Now, normally they wouldn't do this, but if here's the starting point and they go, well, before that we have no data. Well, yeah, of course you'd have no data. But if here's the starting point and they have data, no data, no data, data, yeah, I would dispute that as being incomplete. Cornell, I've sent the letters already, though. Do you think I still might be good, even though it's big paragraph? Yeah, it's fine. I mean, you just want to make it as clear and readable, understandable as possible. What I would say is wait till you get the results back. If they just missed a whole bunch of stuff and you're worried, well, maybe this was a little convoluted, just do another dispute. Make it clear. Hey, guys, this is the second time I'm disputing. And I'm making this as simple as possible for you. Please do it right this time, because that's what I would do. Darren says, I'll shoot over my spreadsheet once I've cleaned it up a bit. Good. Because, I'm a little better at spreadsheets now, but, that's not the world I live in. So, Darren, if you are good at that, I will gladly take what you have, and I appreciate that. Eric says, I use a lot of formulas to extract the data. If you're interested, let me know. Yeah, and Eric, I'll say the same thing. If you don't mind, shoot that to me. I'd like to see, maybe do like a little, if you use Loom or something like that, just do a little screen record and show me, because I'm very interested in that. What I'm trying to do is put tools out there, free of charge that people can use. And whatever we can do to help with that. Again, I have some document automation, and I'm building sort of a program in it where once we have the data, it'll be sort of like an expert system to walk you through and say, well, did you file bankruptcy? If you say no, that's not going to ask you anything about that. If you say yes, it'll say, well, what was the court number? What was the date discharge? And same thing with accounts. It's just taking a while to do that. Let's see. Yeah, Eric, you look like you are a very popular person right now. So everybody, reach out to Eric, and if he will share it with you, that's great. So Kate, I was thinking about creating a small table for each account to dispute. Yeah, you can do that as well. And there's different ways to kind of present the information, to automate it, to make it a template. Again, I'm giving you sort of the Word document if you're just doing it manually, but there are other ways to do this. Let's see, purple is royalty. Okay, let's see. She says, if one agency removed, are the others obligated? No. So each bureau can report its own data, and they make their own judgment call. See, so John Andrew Gordon, do you recommend highlighting the report showing the error when disputing it as an attachment? You certainly can, okay? I think it gets a little cumbersome if you are disputing more than one account. So I'll give you my approach, and I'll give you the other approach. My approach is I want one big letter. It's got the biographical, it's got the inquiries, it's got the public records, it's got, all 7 accounts I'm disputing. Now, another strategy is to make one letter per account. Okay, so the Capital One account would get its own letter. Now, again, it might be to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, but it's only the Capital One account. That would make more sense to say, look, guys, I'm attaching, the 3 pages or 6 pages or whatever from Equifax, Experian, TransUnion showing this Capital One account. I've highlighted, I've circled, that way in case there's a scanning issue, I've circled the errors, and I'll just briefly summarize them, but see the attachments. But if you do it the way that I do with one big letter, you'd end up having 80 pages of attachments. And I think a judge would say it's a little unrealistic to expect a credit bureau to flip through all these, let me see here, this page and this page. So it certainly can be good. And if you are using, a smart credit, identity IQ, again, don't rely on that. But if it's accurate, you can use that because those do come in sort of a table format. So whatever makes it easier, just put yourself kind of think about if you were designing software, designing a website, designing a product, the user experience. You want the credit bureau, even though I don't have any love for them, we want to be more than fair to them. We want to make it so easy, so clear, so understandable that they're without excuse if they botch this thing. Let's see. Darren says, what's the smallest error you consider worthy of a lawsuit? Do you have a threshold? Yeah, I hate to say it depends, but it does depend. It could be, I've got somebody right now, we're looking at the only error is an incorrect social security number. I would sue over that. Okay. A lot of lawsuits we file, it's just one account that maybe it's been paid off and they're reporting a balance. We sue over that. So I would just identify all the legitimate errors, nothing where we're trying to be cute or anything like that. Here are all the errors, all the incompletes, all the inaccurate, all the inconsistent. Put it out there, see what the results are. And look, if they fix everything but one, maybe you still sue or maybe you dispute it again. And that's part of what we'll talk about next week is, all right, let's send out the dispute letters. We get the results back. What do we do? Do we dispute again? Do we sue? If we sue, how do we find the right lawyer? What do we sue for? And so hopefully that will be next week. We'll give you some more information. Kate, is a high limit important? Yeah, I think it is. Now, again, on if you're looking at like a smart credit, I want to say maybe it's, I can't remember, Equifax, that you'll never see the information there, but go look at the actual reports. And if they have a field for it and it's not being reported, I would ask them why, and I would ask them to complete that. Let's see, LaTeX is a great tool to do typesetting. Eric, reach out to me. I'm actually not familiar with that tool. So helping us move forward. Well, you're very welcome. And look, you're doing the same thing. That's the power of this. If we all come together, we can make this thing better. And so we can get errors fixed, or we can sue the bad guys and then get errors fixed. And hey, if they pay us some money along the way, it's what I always tell my client, look, that check from Equifax, it spends just fine. Okay. They don't bounce their checks. Let's see. Cornell says the bureaus haven't responded. How long do I wait to sue them? Well, you want to make sure that they received it and then give them enough time, 30 to 45 days, and then allow some mail time, because they could mail it to you and then it might take a while. So you can also check your online portal. Sometimes they'll show up there. You can call the bureau. Hey, did you get my dispute? And sometimes what we find is when they know they haven't answered, they'll just lie about getting it. You're sitting there like looking at the green card or the electronic signature, and they're like, nope, we never got it. You're like, yeah, you did. And so I sue them for that. Kate, do we really need to attach our credit reports? I'll tell you this, Kate, I normally don't. Okay. That's not something that I typically do. Let's see, Darren, do you have a resource for understanding how each bureau reports, what they use on Metro 2, how to compare the reporting standards? That way, best set up my spreadsheet, line up apples to apples. Yeah. So it's going to be more so if you're using a credit monitoring, because you need to understand, okay, here's what Smart Credit says. This is really field 47 on Metro 2. There is a copy of 2020 Metro 2 that's out there. Okay. And I tell you what, remind me for next week and I'll find that and share that. My only hesitation with it is it's a powerful tool. Okay. if you're going to kind of start diving into Metro 2, you got to be real serious about it. Okay. I mean, and I see this with my fellow lawyers, they'll just like pop off something about, well, Metro 2. And I'm like, you're understanding like on a 1 to 10, like a 1. And anybody with the level 4 knowledge knows what you just said is nonsensical, and so it hurts our credibility, because then judges start, saying, oh, well, don't worry about Metro 2. It's meaningless. Well, it's not meaningless. It's not the law, but it's not meaningless. We just have to use it correctly. So I'll be glad to share that. Just, don't dabble in it is my suggestion. Let's see. That's what we have to do, check all the reports. So D says, how about I dispute LVMV on my report? So it's a little harder with these debt buyers. And I tell you what, I see I'm running a little bit long. We'll talk about that some more next week. I'll tell you what I do. I normally don't, my first dispute to the credit bureaus, I don't say anything about the debt collectors unless, for example, I beat them in court. So they've sued me and I won, then I'll bring them up. But otherwise I don't. I think there's actually much better ways to deal with the debt collectors than disputing through the bureaus, unless you've paid them or there's some blatant inaccuracy. And we'll talk about that next week. And also when we do the training course on the FDCPA, Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. I mean, maybe 1 out of 100 debt collectors will I say anything in the world to Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. There's way better ways to do that. Let's see, D, can we sue for not marking account as disputed? Yes, you can. It can depend on debt collector. We use the FDCPA section 1692E8. If it's an original creditor or a furnisher, then as long as it's what's called a bona fide or a meritorious defense or dispute, then when they update the report, they're supposed to mark it as disputed. I do have a video on my YouTube channel about that. The most important case is called Saunders. Let me just type this in. I think if you search this on my YouTube channel, you'll find it, versus BB&T. And that's a really important case to read. It really lays out the law. Kate says, I have accounts showing account not disputed in line items, but shows account disputed by consumer in remark. Typically, it's going to be in the remarks. Again, on your real reports, that's where you'll find it. Like Smart Credit, they'll have a middle section, like, is this account disputed? That's not a real field. They're sort of pulling that from the remarks there. Let's see, Nicole, apologize having internet issue. Hey, that's we all have that, and I'm just like, knock on wood, we've been able to go this long here. Let's see, Kate says, so don't dispute while in a lawsuit now. So I don't personally, because when you answer the lawsuit, that's like your ultimate dispute letter. So then you see, do they update your report and mark it as disputed? A lot of times the debt buyers don't. So that gives you kind of a trump card, or, ace up your sleeve if you ever want to then sue that debt buyer. So again, we'll cover that in more detail when we talk about the FDCPA. Is it better or worse, Wells Fargo hold my charge off versus a collector? I personally find it easier to deal with collectors than the original creditors, but it can vary. And let's see, D says, so FDCPA E8 would be strict liability. Generally, although specifically section 1692E8 says the debt collector may not report information that it knows or should know to be false as far as credit reporting, including the failure to mark an account as disputed when it's disputed. So generally the FDCPA is what we call strict liability, but that one you need to show that they know or should know you dispute it. Well, if you serve an answer in a lawsuit on their lawyer, they know it. Almost every state says whatever the lawyer learns in the representation is automatically transferred to the client. Okay. So we'll just do a couple more here. Okay. Yeah. Caitlin's got the YouTube link there. So thank you. Yeah. So Kate says, is there any way to save the chat for replay That's a good question. I'll see. There may be something where like I can export it as like a CSV file or something. So let me check on that. But look, guys, I better wrap this up. And I don't know if, wow, there's still a bunch of people on here. So you guys are very, very kind to stay on. Hope that this has been helpful. And we'll kind of finish up next week. We may do some kind of follow-up Q&As on weeks after that. But as far as like the core of it, we'll finish up next week. And then just let me know, if you signed up for the automated emails. You should get those when we do the new ones. If you didn't, you might just want to sign up again, or else email me and say you want automated emails from us. And because we'll start pretty soon that section on dealing with debt collectors. And this will be a really good foundation to have. And then we sort of lay the debt collectors on top of that, and that will be good. So, hey guys, thank you so much. And I'll catch you next week. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.